Assalamu alaikum students, how are you? I hope you will be fine. Open your books, page 132. Today we will read the next half of the story, The Hitch Hiker. Address: 14 Windsor Lane, Newton. Show me something to prove this is your real name and address, the policeman said. My passenger fished in his pocket and came out with a driving license of his own. The policeman checked the name and address and handed it back to him. What's your job? He asked sharply. I'm an odd carrier. A what? An odd carrier. Spell it. HODCA. That do. And what's odd carrier, may I ask? An odd carrier officer is a person who carries the cement up the ladder to the bricklayer, and the odd is what he carries it in. It's got a long handle, and on the top you have got two bits of wood set at an angle. All right. The policeman wrote all this down in the black notebook. Then he returned the book to its pocket and did up the button. When I get back to the station, I'm going to do a little checking up on you, he said to my passenger. Me? What have I done wrong? The red-faced man asked. I don't like your face. That's all, the policeman said, and we just might have a picture of it somewhere in our files. He strolled round the car and returned to my window. I suppose you know you are in serious trouble, he said to me. Yes, officer. You won't be driving this fancy car of yours again for a very long time. I hope they lock you up for a spell too. You mean prison? I asked, alarmed. Absolutely, he said, smacking his lips. In the clink behind the bars, along with all the other criminals who break the law, and a hefty fine into a bargain. Nobody will be more pleased about that than me. I'll see you in court, both of you. You will be getting a summon to appear. He turned away and walked over to his motorcycle. He flipped the prop stand back into position with his foot and swung his leg over the saddle. Then he kicked the starter and rode off up the road out of sight. Phew, I gasped. That's done it. We was caught, my passenger said. We was caught good and proper. I was caught, you mean? That's right, he said. What you going to do now, Governor? I'm going straight up to London to talk to my solicitor. I said. I started the car and drove on. You mustn't believe what he said to you about going to prison. My passenger said. They don't put nobody in the clink just for speeding. Are you sure of that? I asked. I'm positive, he answered. They can take your license away and they can give you a hopping big fine, but that will be the end of it. I felt tremendously relieved, but the way I said, why did you lie to him? Who, me? He said. What makes you think I lied? You told him you were an unemployed hod carrier, but you told me you were a highly skilled trade. So I am, he said, but it don't pay to tell everything to a cooper. So what do? I asked him. Is it something you're ashamed of? Ashamed? He cried. Me ashamed of my job? Then why won't you tell me? You writers really is nosy Parkers, aren't you? He said, and you ain't going to be happy, I don't think, until you have found out exactly what the answer is. I kept quiet and stared at the road ahead. I'm in a very peculiar trade, he said. I waited for him to go on. That's why I asked to be extra careful. Oh, I'm talking to you, see. Or am I to know, for instance, you are not another cooper in plain clothes? Do I look like a cooper? No, he said, you don't. And you aren't, and a fool could tell that. He took from his pocket a tin of tobacco and packet of cigarette papers and started to roll a cigarette. I was watching him out of the corner of one eye, and the speed with which he performed this rather difficult operation was incredible. I have never seen anyone roll a cigarette as fast as that, I said. He sat back and smiled. It pleased him very much that I had noticed how quickly he could roll a cigarette. You want to know what makes me able to do it? He asked. Go on then. It's because I've got fantastic fingers. These fingers of mine, he said, holding up both hands high in front of him, are quicker and cleverer than the fingers of the best piano player in the world. I glanced at his fingers. They were so beautifully shaped, so slim and long and elegant. They didn't seem to belong to the rest of him at all. They looked more like the fingers of a brain surgeon or a watchmaker. My job, he went on, is 100 times more difficult than playing the piano. Any fool can learn to do that, but there's not one person in the 10 million can learn to do what I do. Oh, about that. Amazing, I said. You are darn right, it's amazing, he said. I was taking the car along slowly now to make quite sure I wasn't stopped again. Suddenly, my passenger was holding up a black leather belt in his hand. Ever seen this before? He asked. The belt had a brass buckle of unusual design. Hey, I said, that's mine, isn't it? It's mine. I reached down and felt for my belt. It was gone. You mean you took it off me while we have been driving along? I asked, flabbergasted. He nodded, watching me all the time with those little black ratty eyes. That's impossible, I said. I would have seen you doing it. Ah, but you didn't. Did you? He said, triumphant. He dropped the belt on his lap, and now, all at once, there was a brown shoelace dangling from his finger. And what about this then? He exclaimed, waving the shoelace. Anyone around? Ever missing a shoelace? I glanced down at my shoes. The lace of one was missing. Good grief, I said. How did you do that? I never saw you bending down. You never saw nothing, he said proudly. And you now, why? Yes, I said, because you have got fantastic fingers. Exactly right, he cried. He sat back and smiled. He knew he had impressed me greatly with those two tricks. I don't want to be late, he said. What time is it? There's a clock in front of you, I told him. I don't trust car clocks, he said. What does your watch say? I hitched up my sleeve to look at the watch on my wrist. It wasn't there. He held out his hand, and there was my watch lying in his palm. Nice bit of stuff, this, he said. Superior quality, 18-karat gold, easy to sell. It's never any trouble getting rid of quality goods. I would like it back, if you don't mind, I said rather huffily. He placed the watch carefully on the leather tray in front of him. I wouldn't neg anything from you, Governor, he said. You're my pa. You're giving me a lift. I'm glad to hear it, I said. All I'm doing is answering your questions, he went on. You asked me what I did for a living, and I'm showing you. So, you are a pickpocket, I said. I don't like that word, he answered. It's a vulgar word. Pickpockets are coarse and vulgar people. They lift money from blind old ladies. What do you call yourself then? Me. I am a fingersmith. I am a professional fingersmith. He spoke the words solemnly and proudly. I've never heard that word before, I said. Did you invent it? Of course, I didn't invent it, he replied. You have heard a goldsmith and a silversmith. For instance, they are experts with gold and silver. I am an expert with my fingers, so I am a fingersmith. And that's why you go to the races? Race meetings are good, he said. You just stand around after the race watching for the lucky ones to draw their money. And when you see someone collecting a big bundle of notes, you simply follows after him and helps yourself. But I never takes nothing from a loser, nor from poor people neither. I only go after the winners and the rich. That's very thoughtful of you, I said. We drove on for a while without talking. That policeman's going to check up on you pretty thoroughly, I said. Doesn't that worry you a bit? Nobody's checking up on me, he said. Of course they are. He's got your name and address written down most carefully in his black book. The man gave me another of his silly, ratty little smiles. Ah, he said. So E.S. But I'll bet he and go it all written down in his memory as well. What's memory got to do with it? I asked. It's written down in his book, isn't it? Yes, Governor, it is. But the trouble is, he's lost both books. The one with my name in it and the one with yours. In the long, delicate fingers of his right hand, the man was holding up in triumph the two books he had taken from the policeman's pocket. Now the exercise. Part A is related to comprehension. Question number 1 is related to answer the following questions. Which words in the first paragraph of the story tell us that the owner of the car is rich? The words in the first paragraph of the story that tells us that the owner of the car is rich are new car and exciting toy. And the description of the car tells us that the owner of the car is a rich person. Second question, why does the driver stop for the hitchhiker? The driver stops for the hitchhiker because he used to hitchhike himself and hated it when the drivers pretended not to see him. In this way, you are to mark the answers of all these questions from the story. Question number 2. Answer the following questions with reference to context. Part A. Text is, and you aren't going to be happy, I don't think, until you have found out exactly what the answer is. So first question is, who is the speaker? The hitchhiker is the speaker. Second question, what was the question to which the speaker refers? The writer asked him what his job was, and when he did not answer, he asked if he was ashamed of his job. Third question, did the speaker eventually answer the question? How did he go about doing this? Yes, he went about answering the question by demonstrating his skills. Part B. They were so beautifully shaped, so slim and long and elegant. What is being referred to? The hitchhiker's fingers. Second question. In what way was this feature odd? They were so different from the rest of the personality of the hitchhiker. Question third. Why was it appropriate that they were shaped thus? They were quicker and cleverer than the fingers of the best piano player in the world. It was appropriate that they were shaped thus. Thank you.